Is the $1,500 I send you each month enough to cover your college expenses, Wayne? My grandfather's question cut through the air like a sharp blade during Sunday dinner at my parents' house. The fork slipped from my hand and hit the plate with a metallic clang that echoed through the quiet dining room. All eyes turned to me. My mother stopped chewing, my father put down his wine glass, and my older brother, Derek, stared at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. What money? The words came out of my mouth as a hoarse whisper. Grandpa Henry frowned, his confused expression quickly turning into something much more serious. The money I've been transferring into your student account every month for almost 2 years. $1,500 a month. My name is Wayne, I'm 21 years old, and at that moment, I felt my world crumble as I stared at the faces of my family. Because I never, not once, received a penny of that money. My mind raced back to the last 2 years at the University of Colorado. The sleepless nights working at the construction supply warehouse from 5 in the morning until 9, rushing to class, then straight to my second job waiting tables at a Mexican restaurant until after midnight. The weeks when the money didn't come and I split a package of instant noodles into 3 meals. The times I passed out from hunger during class. The silence at the table stretched like a string about to snap. Wayne didn't get any money, Grandpa Henry said, his voice taking on a dangerous tone I knew well. It was the same tone he used when he found out someone was trying to cheat him in business. Where's the money, Robert? My father turned pale. Mom began to nervously play with her necklace, avoiding looking directly at me or Grandpa. Dad, it's complicated, my father stammered, the words tripping over each other. Maybe we should talk about this in private. Nothing private, Grandpa slammed his fist on the table, making the plates rattle. I want to know right now where my grandson's money is. That's when Derek spoke up, his voice low and tense. They used the money to pay off my poker debts. The world stopped. My breath caught in my throat as my brother's words echoed around the room. Poker debts. While I was starving, working 17 hours a day and carrying building materials that weighed more than I did, they were using Grandpa's money to fund the addictions of the golden boy of the family. Grandpa Henry rose slowly, his chair scraping across the floor with a sound that made me shudder. At 83, he was still an imposing presence when he was angry. $36,000, he said, each word cutting like glass. $36,000 in 2 years. Money that was supposed to help Wayne graduate debt-free, so he could focus on his studies instead of killing himself working. Mom finally found her voice, though it was shaky. Dad, Derek was in serious trouble. Dangerous people were threatening him. We had no choice. No choice. Grandpa's voice rose an octave. The choice was between telling the truth and lying to me while Wayne suffered. I looked at Derek, my older brother by 3 years, the same one who had always been treated like the crown prince of this family. The same one who got a convertible Mustang when he turned 16 while I got a used bike. The same one who never had to work a day in his life because he needed to focus on his engineering studies. How long? I asked, my voice coming out firmer than I felt. How long have you known about his addiction? The silence that followed was more revealing than any answer. If you're enjoying this story of family betrayal and want to find out how this explosive situation unfolds, don't forget to subscribe to the channel because what comes next will blow your mind. Because at that moment, looking at the guilty faces of my family, a question began to form in my mind. If they lied about this, what else were they lying about? The explosion that followed Derek's confession was like watching a building collapse in slow motion. Mom stood up so abruptly that she knocked over her glass of red wine, creating a scarlet stain that spread across the white tablecloth like blood. Derek, why did you say that? She screamed, her voice breaking in despair. Because I can't stand lying anymore, Derek replied, running his hands through his dark hair. Look at him, Mom. Look what we've done to our own brother. And that's exactly what everyone did. They looked at me. I was sitting there, 21 years old, weighing 128 pounds when I should have weighed at least 154. My blue plaid shirt, which had once belonged to Derek, hung on me like a scarecrow. The deep circles under my eyes told the story of months of sleeping 3 hours a night. Grandpa Henry came over to me and touched my shoulder with a gentleness that almost made me break down. Tell me everything, kid. From the beginning. So I told him. About waking up at 4:30 in the morning to get to the warehouse by 5. About carrying 50-pound bags of cement for 4 hours before rushing to my first class at 9. About working at the restaurant until 1 in the morning, arriving at the dorm too exhausted to study properly. Remember last week when you called asking if I was eating right? I asked Mom, my voice gaining strength. I said yes because I was ashamed to admit that I had spent 2 days eating only granola bars I found in my closet. Dad tried to intervene. Wayne, son, if you had told us you were in need. I did. The explosion came out of me with a force that surprised me. I called you last October, crying, begging for help because I couldn't pay my dorm rent. You know what you told me, Dad? Real men find a way. Get another job. The silence in the room was deafening. And you, Mom, I continued, turning to her, when I called in December because my shoes were worn out and I was walking in the snow with wet socks every day. You said I was being dramatic and that I should learn to manage my money better. Grandpa Henry slammed his fist on the table again, making the plates jump. Meanwhile, you were getting $1,500 a month of my money. Money that was specifically for him. Derek finally found the courage to speak again. It wasn't just the monthly allowance, Grandpa. Remember the $8,000 you sent for his first semester tuition? My blood ran cold. What $8,000? Wayne never had any tuition problems, Mom said quickly. He has a scholarship. Partial scholarship, Derek corrected, looking at me with guilt-filled eyes. His scholarship covers 60%. Grandpa sent $8,000 to cover the rest for the first semester, plus $8,000 for the second semester, plus $8,000 for the third. Grandpa Henry stood slowly, his expression shifting from anger to something far more dangerous, utter disappointment. $24,000 in tuition, plus $36,000 in room and board. $60,000, Robert. In 2 years. The math hit me like a punch in the stomach. $60,000. While I was literally starving, working myself sick, and sleeping on the floor of my bedroom because I couldn't afford the deposit for a bed. Wayne, Derek's voice was shaky. Remember that time you passed out during organic chemistry in freshman year? When you said you had the flu. I remembered it perfectly. I hadn't eaten anything in 2 days because I spent my last money on the textbook the professor said was required. We were in Las Vegas, Derek whispered, celebrating because I had a lucky streak at blackjack. We spent $2,000 of your money on that trip. Each revelation was like being hit with a hammer. I got up from my chair, my legs wobbly, and walked to the dining room window. Outside, the quiet suburban neighborhood looked peaceful, normal. Children played in the street. Ordinary families with ordinary problems. There's more, Derek said behind me, and I closed my eyes tightly. Derek, that's enough, Dad tried to silence him. No, Dad. He deserves to know everything. Derek took a deep breath. Wayne, remember when you called on Christmas asking if you could come home? And we said we were traveling. I turned to face him. I remembered perfectly. I had spent Christmas alone in my empty dorm room, eating instant noodles and watching reruns of old movies. We didn't go anywhere. We were here. But I had lost a really big bet and I was being threatened. Some people came to the house. Mom and Dad thought it would be dangerous for you to be here. So you left me alone on Christmas to protect the son who caused the problem, I said, my voice coming out strangely calm. Interesting choice. Grandpa Henry approached my parents, his posture straight despite his 83 years. Robert, Elizabeth, you have 5 minutes to explain to me exactly where every penny of that money went. And if I find out you lied about anything, you'll never see a penny of mine again. Dad looked at Mom, who nodded with tears in her eyes. The first bet started in Derek's senior year of high school, Dad began, his voice faltering. Small things, online sports betting. By the time he got to college, he was betting on poker online. In his first semester, he lost $4,000 from the savings account we opened for him, Mom continued. We didn't tell you, Dad, because we thought it was just a phase. Derek stood up and began pacing back and forth. But it wasn't a phase. It got worse. I started gambling in casinos, then illegal games. By my sophomore year, I owed $20,000 to some very dangerous people. That's when you first used Wayne's money, Grandpa said, not a question. We were going to pay it back, Dad said desperately. We thought Derek would learn his lesson, that he'd stop after a scare. But he kept gambling. And you kept using my money to pay his debts, I said, turning back to the window. For 2 years. while I worked 17 hours a day. The irony was too bitter. Derek, the perfect son who never had to work a day in his life, was destroying her life with gambling while I, the forgotten son, was killing myself working to survive. And our parents chose to save the addict by letting the hard-working son go without. Wayne, Mom's voice was breaking, we never wanted you to know. We thought we could work it out without involving you. Without involving me? I turned to her, feeling a cold anger spreading through my chest. Mom, I was involved from the first day I went hungry to pay for my education. I was involved every time I worked sick because I couldn't miss a day's pay. I was involved every time I cried alone in my room because I didn't understand why you wouldn't help me. Grandpa Henry looked at each of us and then at Derek. How many times have you been in rehab? 3, Derek replied quietly. The first was when Wayne started college. The second was last year. I'm on my third now, going to therapy twice a week. Paid for with your brother's money, Grandpa observed. The weight of it all was starting to suffocate me. 2 hours ago, I thought my family simply didn't care about me. Now I was finding out they cared enough to steal my future to save Derek. I need to get out of here, I announced, walking toward the door. Wayne, wait, Mom tried to follow me. No, I stopped at the door and turned around one last time. You had 2 years to tell me the truth. 2 years of watching me struggle, suffer, and you never thought I deserved to know what was happening with the money Grandpa was sending me. I grabbed my jacket and left, closing the door firmly behind me. Outside, the crisp October air helped me breathe again. As I walked through the familiar streets of my childhood, one question hammered in my head: if they lied about this, what else were they hiding from me? And more importantly, how would I make them pay for every moment of unnecessary suffering they had caused me? I walked for 2 hours through the streets of the neighborhood where I grew up, my mind processing each revelation like a computer trying to decipher a complex code. $60,000. 2 words that completely changed my understanding of the last 2 years. Every stomach ache caused by hunger, every double shift that left me dizzy with exhaustion, every night I cried alone in my dorm room thinking my family had forgotten me. All lies. When I finally stopped, I was standing in front of the old playground where Derek and I used to play when we were kids. Ironic. Even then, Derek always got the best toys, was always the first to be picked for games. Our family dynamic had started early. My phone vibrated. A message from Derek: Wayne, please call me. I need to explain everything. I deleted it without responding. Another vibration. Mom, son, come home. We can talk about this as a family. I deleted that one too. Dad, Wayne, you need to understand that we did what we thought was best. Delete. 7 messages in 15 minutes. Now they wanted to talk. Where was this urgency to communicate when I was begging for help? I sat down on a bench next to the playground and called my roommate, Marcus. Wayne? Dude, are you okay? You sound weird. Marcus, can you pick me up? I'm in Colorado Springs, at the playground on Elm Street. What the hell are you doing there? I thought you were having dinner with your family. Long story. Can you come? I'm on my way. As I waited for Marcus, the pieces continued to fall into place in my head. I remembered Derek visiting me at college only twice in 2 years. On both occasions, he seemed nervous, distracted, always checking his phone. At the time, I thought he was busy with his engineering studies. Now I understood, he was dealing with creditors, with threats, with the constant pressure of an addiction that consumed not only his money, but mine as well. The irony was cruel. While I was carrying bags of cement to pay for my meals, Derek was using my money to finance bets that could yield thousands. While I slept 4 hours a night between 2 jobs, he was in casinos gambling away the resources that should have been giving me the same sacrifice-free education Grandpa Henry had planned. Marcus arrived 40 minutes later, driving his noisy blue Honda Civic. Get in, man. You look like you've seen a ghost. I got in the car and told him everything during the 45-minute drive back to campus. Marcus drove in silence, occasionally letting out an "fuck" or "I don't believe it" when I got to the most absurd parts. So let me get this straight, he said when we got back to the dorm. Your family stole $60,000 from your grandfather that was specifically for you, used it all to pay off your brother's gambling debts, and lied about it for 2 years while you were practically starving to death. Basically. And they only told you the truth because your grandfather asked them in front of everyone about the money? Exactly. Marcus shook his head. Man, that's criminal. Literally criminal. We went up to our room on the 3rd floor. The dorm was quiet, as it was Sunday night and most of the students were getting ready for the week of classes. Marcus, I said, sitting down on my narrow bed, do you think I'm an idiot for never suspecting anything? Man, you trusted your family. That doesn't make you an idiot, it makes you human. He sat down in the computer chair. The question is, what are you going to do now? That was the question, wasn't it? For 2 hours of walking the streets, I had focused on the shock, the betrayal, the cruel math of $60,000. But Marcus was right. The question now was action. I don't know, I admitted. Part of me wants to call the police. Another part just wants to cut them off forever. What about Grandpa Henry? He seemed pissed. I remembered my grandfather's expression when the truth came out. 83 years old, but still intimidating when he was angry. He wasn't just pissed. He was disappointed. And that's worse. My phone rang again. This time it was Grandpa Henry. Should I get it? I asked Marcus. Go ahead, man. At least he didn't lie to you. Grandpa. Wayne, where are you? Your parents are here making a scene, saying you ran away and they're worried. I'm at the dorm. And I didn't run away, I just left before I said something I'd regret. Good. Smart. There was a pause. Boy, I need to tell you some things. Things I found out after you left. My stomach tightened. There's more. A lot more. But I'm not going to talk about it on the phone. Do you have class tomorrow? Yes, but I can skip it. No. Don't skip class because of this mess. They've already messed up your education enough. Her voice was firm. Are you free Wednesday afternoon? After 2. Perfect. I'll pick you up at campus at 2:30. We're going to have a long talk. After I hung up, Marcus looked at me expectantly. There's more, I said. What do you mean, there's more? I don't know. But from the sound of Grandpa's voice, what we found out today was just the tip of the iceberg. I spent the entire night awake, staring at the ceiling of my dorm room and trying to imagine what other lies my family had told. If they lied about $60,000 for 2 years, what else were they lying about? On Monday morning, I woke up with a strange clarity. While I was showering, I made a decision. I would no longer be the passive victim in this story. They had chosen Derek over me repeatedly. They had chosen to lie rather than ask for help honestly. They had chosen to let me suffer to protect their troubled son. Now it was my turn to make choices. First choice, document everything. Every message, every phone call, every attempt they made to minimize or justify what they did. Second choice, find out exactly how much damage had been done. Not just financially, but academically, emotionally, physically. Third choice, decide how they would pay for it. Because one thing Derek was right about, they would pay. As I brushed my teeth, I looked at my reflection in the mirror. The thin face, the dark circles under my eyes, the look of someone much older than 21. 2 years of unnecessary suffering written on my skin. But behind the exhaustion, I saw something new. A cold determination that had never been there before. Marcus was right about one thing, this was criminal. And criminals need to face consequences. The question was no longer whether they would pay. The question was how much, how, and when I would choose to collect. On Wednesday, at 2:30 sharp, Grandpa Henry was in the campus parking lot driving his black Ford F-150. Even at 83, he still drove his own truck and still looked capable of hauling logs if necessary. Get in, kid. We've got a lot to talk about. As we left campus, a single question hammered in my head. If Derek had been addicted to gambling for so long, and if my parents knew about it, what other things in my life had been sacrificed to protect the golden child of the family? And more importantly, how would I make them understand that they had chosen the wrong son to protect? Grandpa Henry drove in silence for the first 15 minutes, his hand steady on the wheel of the black F-150. At 83, he still had the posture of a man who had built a construction empire from scratch, and today that posture radiated a cold anger that made me curious and nervous at the same time. Where are we going? I asked as we passed the sign marking the exit from the city. Somewhere we can talk without interruption, he replied, his eyes fixed on the road. Your father has tried to call me 17 times since Sunday. Your mother showed up at my house yesterday crying, begging me to understand their situation. My stomach tightened. And did you? Grandpa let out a bitter laugh. Oh, I understand a lot more than they do. We pulled into a small roadside restaurant about 20 miles outside of town. The kind of place truckers stop to eat apple pie and drink strong coffee. Grandpa chose a table in the far corner and ordered 2 cups of coffee. Wayne, he began, pulling a manila folder from under his arm, what I'm about to show you is going to be hard to swallow. But you deserve to know the whole truth. He opened the folder and took out a stack of bank statements. After you guys left on Sunday, I called my accountant and asked him to review all the transfers I've made to your parents over the past 5 years. 5 years? My heart raced. The $60,000 we discovered on Sunday was just what I sent specifically marked Wayne's education and expenses, he continued, sliding the papers across the table. But there were other transfers. Many others. I took the statements with trembling hands. The first page showed a transfer of $20,000 in December 2019, marked Derek Medical Emergency. What medical emergency? I asked. According to his parents, Derek had broken his leg in a skiing accident and needed surgery. Without health insurance, they said they needed help with the medical bills. I turned the page. Another transfer, $15,000 in March 2020, marked urgent home repairs. Derek never broke his leg, I said, remembering perfectly. I saw him that same month, and he was perfectly fine. Keep reading. Page after page of transfers. $10,000 for Derek's car problems. $12,000 for extra college expenses. $8,000 for lab equipment needed for engineering course. The last entry made me choke. $25,000 transferred just 3 months ago, marked help with Derek's early graduation. Early graduation? My voice came out as a whisper. Grandpa nodded grimly. According to his parents, Derek was graduating a year early and needed money for a special ceremony and to move to a job in Denver. I quickly added up the numbers in my head. On top of the $60,000 they stole from me, there was at least another $80,000 in fake emergencies for Derek. $140,000, Grandpa said, reading my thoughts. In 5 years. And Derek wasn't even in college. I leaned back in my chair, feeling as if I'd been punched in the stomach. Grandpa, that's criminal. Literally fraud. I know. His voice was calm, but there was something dangerous in his eyes. And there's more. He pulled another set of papers from the folder. I called some of my contacts in the construction industry. People I've known for decades. I asked about his father, how his company was doing. Dad worked as a subcontractor, specializing in commercial renovations. He always told me business was good, but never great. Robert hasn't had a real contract in 2 years, Grandpa said. His company is technically bankrupt. They've been living off my money all this time. The pieces fell into place with painful clarity. This wasn't just about Derek. It was about all of them living off me while I worked my ass off to get by. Is there more? I asked, not sure I wanted to know. Grandpa picked up his phone and showed me a text conversation. Your mother sent this to me last night. I read the messages with growing disbelief. Dad, Wayne is being dramatic about this whole situation. You know how sensitive he is. Derek really needs our help right now. He's making so much progress in therapy. Maybe we could talk about reducing Wayne's allowance to $1,000 a month? Just until Derek stabilizes. Wayne doesn't even need that much money. He's young and strong, he can work. I finished reading and handed the phone back, my anger growing like a fire fueled by gasoline. They still want to cut my money to give more to Derek, I said, my voice shaking with rage. Not anymore, Grandpa said firmly. Not a penny more. We spent the next hour planning. Grandpa had already spoken to his lawyer about legal options. Although I could technically sue them for fraud, it would be difficult to prove that the money was specifically mine, since the transfers were made to them as intermediaries. But there are other ways to get justice, Grandpa said, his eyes shining with determination. And some of them will hurt a lot more than a lawsuit. What do you have in mind? First, I need you to document everything. Every message they've sent you, every phone call, every interaction since Sunday. If they try to minimize or deny what they've done, I want evidence. I grabbed my phone and showed him the 17 unread messages from my parents since Sunday. I'm already doing that. Good. Second, I want you to tell me exactly how these past 2 years have affected your health, your grades, your social life. Everything. I spent the next 20 minutes recounting every detail. The fainting spells from lack of food. The sleepless nights. How my grades had dropped in the first semester because I was working too hard to study properly. How I had lost weight to the point where other students asked if I was sick. Grandpa wrote everything down in a notebook, his face growing darker with each revelation. Third, he said when I finished, I want you to accept something I'm going to propose to you, even if it seems like too much at first. What is it? I'm going to transfer $200,000 into an account I'll open specifically for you. It's not charity, it's restitution. It's what you should have received from the beginning, with interest for the 2 years of suffering. My mouth opened, but no sound came out. In addition, he continued, I want you to stop working immediately. Focus solely on your studies. Get your health back, your grades, your life. Grandpa, I can't accept that much. You can and you will. His voice left no room for discussion. Wayne, in 5 years I gave your family over $140,000 based on lies. $200,000 to you based on the truth is the least I can do. If you're following this story of family betrayal and want to see how a family can turn against its own members, don't forget to subscribe to the channel because the revenge that is being planned will surprise even you. Now, Grandpa said, putting the papers back in the folder, tell me exactly what you want to do with this information. The question hung in the air between us. For 3 days, I had felt anger, betrayal, disbelief. But now, with the full extent of the lie revealed, I felt something different solidifying inside me. I want them to feel exactly how they made me feel, I said slowly. I want them to experience the despair of not knowing how they're going to pay the bills. I want them to feel the humiliation of having to beg for help and be rejected. Grandpa nodded approvingly. What about Derek? I thought about my brother for a moment. Derek needs real help, not money to keep gambling. But it's not my responsibility to save him while I'm drowning. Perfect. Then here's what we'll do. Grandpa outlined a plan that was simultaneously simple and devastating. First, he would cut off all financial support to my parents. Second, he would make sure the entire extended family knew exactly why the support was being cut off. Third, he would transfer all the property and investments my parents hoped to inherit into a foundation in my name. But the most important part, he said, his eyes meeting mine, is that you will thrive. You will graduate with honors. You will be healthy and happy. The best revenge is success. When we left the restaurant 2 hours later, I had a complete plan and the resources to execute it. More importantly, I had the blessing and support of someone who really cared about me. On the way back to campus, Grandpa made one last observation. Wayne, your parents are going to try everything to get you to intercede on their behalf. They'll appeal to your guilt, to family love, to responsibility. Are you prepared for that? I looked out the truck window, watching the Colorado mountains rise majestically against the blue sky. For 2 years, I had looked at those same mountains as I drove to jobs that left me exhausted, wondering why my family didn't care enough to help me. Now I knew they cared enough to rob me. I'm ready, I said, and for the first time in years, I actually believed the words. Because the war was just beginning. And this time, I had the right weapons to win. The first bomb dropped on Monday morning. Grandpa Henry called Dad and asked him to meet him at the bank. We need to review some investments, he said casually. Meanwhile, I was on campus for the first time in 2 years with no rush to get to work. The feeling was strange, almost unreal. At 2 in the afternoon, my phone rang. It's done, Grandpa said simply. I closed all the accounts. I canceled all the cards. Robert turned white when I showed him the statements. 2 hours later, my phone exploded. Dad, Wayne, your grandfather has gone crazy. You need to talk to him. Mom, please, we're a family. Don't let him punish us like this. I ignored them all. On Tuesday, Grandpa executed phase 2, He told the entire extended family exactly what they had done to me. Aunt Carol called me in tears. $140,000? Wayne, how did you survive? I explained briefly. When I finished, she was furious. I'm going to talk to your mother. This is unforgivable. The story spread like wildfire. Each call from outraged relatives was another source of support my parents lost forever. The real explosion happened on Friday. Derek showed up at my dorm room, desperate. Wayne, you have to stop this. They can't pay the bills without Grandpa. How was therapy this week? I asked calmly. Don't be sarcastic. $70 a session, twice a week. $560 a month out of the money that's supposed to feed me. Derek ran his hands through his hair. They're our parents. They don't deserve to be out on the street. I spent 2 years literally starving. Do you know what it's like to pass out during a test? I can get money, Derek said desperately. I have some bets that could pay off. Bets? I yelled. No. Investments. Legal stuff. I put Grandpa on speakerphone. Grandpa, Derek is still gambling. The silence was deafening. Derek, get out now. And don't go near Wayne until you prove you're clean. Derek looked at me pleadingly. We're brothers. Brothers don't let brothers go hungry while they gamble away his money. Saturday arrived with the final phase. Grandpa called a meeting at my parents' house to sort out the financial situation. I arrived carrying a folder with all the evidence. Mom and Dad looked years older. Derek avoided my gaze. Well, Grandpa began, taking documents out of the folder. I've canceled all financial support. Today I've come to make additional changes official. He placed a document on the table. This house is being transferred to Wayne. Mom turned pale. Dad, you can't. The 2 rental properties, too. And the $100,000 savings account. Dad stood up, shaking. This is excessive. Excessive. Grandpa exploded. You stole for 5 years. You let a young man go hungry. And there's more, I said, opening my briefcase. Dad, your company has been bankrupt for 2 years. You've been living off Grandpa's money. Absolute silence. Not only did you spend my money on Derek, I continued, but you lied about having your own income. Wayne, Mom whispered, you don't understand the pressure. I understand perfectly. You chose Derek over me. Repeatedly. I stood up, taking the keys Grandpa had given me. You have 30 days to move out. The money you were hoping to inherit will now pay for my education. Mom started to cry. Please forgive your parents. You had 5 years to tell me the truth. You chose to let me believe you didn't care about me. I walked to the door. Now you'll learn to live with the consequences of your choices. Derek asked desperately, what now? What are we going to do? But I was already out the door, breathing the free air of someone finally in control of his own life. Outside, Grandpa was waiting for me leaning against his F-150. How do you feel? He asked. Free, I replied, and for the first time in years, it was actually true. Because while they wondered how they would survive without the money they stole from me, I would finally discover what it was like to live without lies, without betrayal, without being treated like a second-class citizen in my own family. The real revenge wasn't seeing them suffer. It was finally being able to thrive. 6 months later, I was sitting in the new law office Grandpa Henry had hired for me, reviewing the final documents for the property transfer. Life had changed in ways I could never have imagined. First, the consequences for my family hit like a tsunami. Dad had to declare personal bankruptcy when creditors found out his company hadn't existed for 2 years. Mom was forced to sell her jewelry and cars to pay basic debts. Derek? Well, Derek finally hit rock bottom. Without Grandpa's steady stream of cash to fund his gambling, he lost his apartment and had to move into a basement room at a friend's house. The last I heard, he was working at a car wash, trying to save up for rehab, which he would have to pay for himself. How do you feel about all this? Asked my psychologist, Dr. Martinez, during one of our weekly sessions. It was a question I asked myself constantly. Relieved, I answered honestly. For the first time in years, I don't feel like I'm carrying the weight of the world on my shoulders. And it was true. With Grandpa's financial support, I had quit both jobs and devoted myself completely to my studies. My grade point average jumped from a 2.8 to a 3.9 in one semester. I gained weight, muscle, and for the first time since I was 18, I looked like someone my age. And your family? Dr. Martinez pressed. They made choices, I said, staring out the office window. For 5 years, they chose Derek over me. They chose lies over the truth. They chose to sacrifice me to protect his addiction. 2 weeks ago, Mom had called me for the first time since the meeting at their house. Wayne, her voice was shaky, your father is in the hospital. He had a heart attack due to stress. Could you help us with the medical bills? The irony was bitter. They had spent $140,000 on lies, and now they were asking for help with a real emergency. Mom, I said calmly, remember when I called asking for help because I was starving? You told me to get another job. Wayne, please. The answer is no. Good luck. I hung up and blocked the number. Marcus, who had witnessed the call, shook his head. Man, that was cold. But fair. They had 5 years to make the right choice, I replied. I'm not responsible for the consequences of his choices. Grandpa Henry started visiting me every week, always bringing stories about how our extended family was reacting to the situation. Aunt Carol wants to know if you're going to her summer barbecue, he said during Sunday lunch. She said you're always welcome, but your parents aren't. What about the rest of the family? They're split. Half think you were too harsh. The other half think you were too soft. We laughed together. At 83, Grandpa Henry had become not only my financial benefactor, but my life mentor. Wayne, he said, becoming serious, I want you to know that I'm proud of you. Not just for how you handled this situation, but for who you've become throughout this process. Thank you, Grandpa. For everything. You know what makes me most proud? He asked, smiling. You could have used that money to get cruel revenge. You could have publicly humiliated them or ruined their lives for the pleasure of it. But you simply removed their undeserved support and let them face the natural consequences of their actions. He was right. I could have done much worse. I could have exposed all the lies publicly. I could have sued them for fraud. I could have made their lives hell. Instead, I simply stopped being their victim. The real transformation had happened inside me. 2 years of working 17 hours a day taught me resilience. 5 years of being forgotten taught me independence. Discovering my family's betrayal taught me the difference between true love and manipulation. Today, as I prepared for my senior year of college, I knew exactly who I was and what I was worth. Last week, I received a letter from Derek. The first real communication in months. Wayne, the letter said, I know I don't deserve your forgiveness. I know I wasted chances you never had. I want you to know that I've been in recovery for 90 days. This time it's different because I'm doing it for myself, not to please anyone else. I'm not asking for money or forgiveness. I just wanted you to know that I finally understand what I did to you. And I'm sorry. I put the letter in a drawer. Maybe someday I'd write back. Maybe not. Forgiveness is something you give when you're ready, not when someone asks for it. 3 days ago, I ran into Dad at the grocery store. He was thinner, grayer, pushing a cart with store brands instead of the expensive brands he used to buy. Our eyes met for a moment. He lowered his head and walked away. I felt no anger or satisfaction. Just a distant sadness for what our family could have been if they had made different choices. Dr. Martinez asked me if I had any regrets. Only one, I replied. I regret not finding out the truth sooner. Because the truth set me free. Not just financially, but emotionally. Today I know that I deserve to be treated with respect. I know that my family was wrong to sacrifice me for Derek. I know that I am not responsible for saving people who don't want to be saved. And most importantly, I know that sometimes the family we choose is more important than the family we are born into. Grandpa Henry, Dr. Martinez, Marcus, my academic advisor Professor Williams, my new friends from the study group, these are the people who support me, respect me, and believe in my potential. Next month, I'll graduate magna cum laude with a degree in mechanical engineering. I already have 3 job offers from top-tier companies. Grandpa Henry offered me a position at his construction company, but I want to forge my own path. Are you sure? He asked when I respectfully declined. I am. I need to know that I did this on my own. He smiled proudly. That's my grandson. If this story of overcoming adversity and justice touched your heart, subscribe to our channel because we have dozens of other stories about people who refused to accept injustice and fought to get their lives back. Stories that prove that sometimes the best revenge is simply to live well. Yesterday, 5 years after that family reunion that changed everything, I received my diploma with highest honors. In the audience were Grandpa Henry, Professor Williams, Dr. Martinez, and Marcus. My parents weren't there. Neither was Derek. And for the first time, it didn't hurt. Because I discovered something fundamental: you don't need the approval of those who hurt you to validate your success. The last I heard, Derek was 3 months clean and working as a mechanic. Dad got a part-time job at an accounting firm. Mom was selling cosmetics online. Me? Well, next Monday I start my first job as a junior engineer at an aerospace company, earning more in 6 months than I did in 2 years working 17 hours a day. The difference is that now, every dollar I earn is the result of my own effort, my own merit. And that's priceless.